Honor that I introduce our next speaker. He's a man that's by Mr. Carlos Gutierrez. Carlos Gutierrez Jr. is my best friend from Georgetown. We attended Bob Bees's, we were in Bob Bees's program together. Extremely close. We talk about everything. His dad is someone that I really look up to because he's been a leader in the corporate sector as well as in the government sector. He was CEO and chairman of the Kellogg Company. He rose for 25 years. He started at the Kellogg Company selling frosted flakes from the back of a truck. And from there, in Mexico City, from there he rose all the way to CEO and chairman of Kellogg. It's an amazing feat. It really is. He was Secretary of Commerce under George W. Bush. And through it all, this man has remained humbled and really has always provided sound advice. He's always provided me with sound advice. And one advice that I'd like to share with you really quick. When I was hired for this program, I was out to dinner with his family, and I had reached out to him, and I told him about the LLI. And I said, you know, this is the right thing to do, and I'm going to go ahead and do it. And he said, you know, I said it was a new program, so you know, we're going to build it from the ground up, which is really exciting. And he said, Dario, there are two types of people in life. There are those that always take small risk, therefore their rewards will always be small. And there are those that always take large risks, and therefore the rewards will always be large. And you're on this side, my friend. And that advice has stuck to me. I mean, I had my U-Haul packed like the next day. But so it's an honor to really have him have Secretary Gutierrez close us out today, because he has a very, not only inspirational personal story, but he is a leader in and out of the Latino community. And he wanted to come to Boston to share that message personally from him to you. So please welcome Secretary Carlos Gutierrez.
Gracias. Buenas tardes a todos. Buenas tardes. I just want to take a second and introduce two members of my family who are here, my son Carlos and my niece Corina, his cousin. And thank you all for what you're doing. I can't tell you how proud I feel when I am in a group of young, aggressive, curious, dynamic Latinos. You are truly part of the future, and let me just say, all of you are going to be successful in your own right because of what you are learning, because of what you're being exposed to, because of you. What will make the difference between some who may be incredibly successful versus those who are very successful? The difference will be one single thing. And I wish I would have known this 25 years ago. So if you could learn it now, what a great thing. And that is people and your ability to lead people. And I've watched careers over time, and if you look at how is it that two people study the same thing, they get the same grades, and they go on into a career, and one goes farther than the other. And the difference is the ability to lead people. So your job, if it isn't to lead people now, it's to deal with people. You have mentors. You have people who you are mentoring. You have peers. You have teachers. You have faculty. All those people around you are going to make a difference in where you go and how far you go. This is a time, I just got back from Europe, and this is a time for leadership. Everywhere you look, there is a problem that requires nothing less than incredible leadership. And I'm talking about the private sector, I'm talking about government, I'm talking about world economies. I mean, 2 weeks ago, people were talking about Greece and how, you know, it's incredible that the Greek economy is, you know, almost in bankruptcy. And everybody's talking about their deficit and their debt. The interesting thing is that they shouldn't be talking about Greece. The two biggest deficits in the world are the UK and Spain. Do you know what the third is? It's the US. That means our deficit is bigger than Greece's. Amazing. I mean, that's just one of many challenges. How are you going to attack that? And maybe many of you will be out there at the time when it's, you know, when it's really coming to crunch time. But we're not going to get any of these problems done inside corporations, inside government, inside nonprofit institutions without leadership. So I thought what I'd do is give you some observations about leaders, people who I have observed. I've had the opportunity of spending 30 years in business and almost 5 years in government, and I've been able to observe some unbelievably great leaders. And I'll tell you the one thing that I've observed that is common across the board are certain traits, but not personality, not race, not gender, not ethnicity. I've known leaders who are shy. I've known leaders who are extroverts. I've known leaders who are black. I've known leaders who are white. I've known leaders who are Latinos. I've known women. I've known leaders who are tall and skinny and short and stocky. It doesn't matter. There is no, you know, there is no central casting when it comes to leadership. It is about traits that you have and traits that you can put in place. But everyone has access to those traits. So let me just tell you what I've observed as I think about great leaders who I've known and who I've learned from and who I admire to this day. The first thing that they all had, and I always thought they were a little bit crazy because of this, is what I would call the will to be a leader. Will. Because it's risky business. I know a lot of people who want to be the boss. I know a lot of people who love to be the boss. But that doesn't mean they're leaders. And not everyone who gets to the top, unfortunately, is a leader. And not everyone has a will to be a leader. And what I mean by will is this notion that there's some people who love the idea that I'm going to get to the office this morning and I'm going to be confronted with an unbelievably big problem, and I have to decide how we start allocating resources and how we start organizing things because I'm leading this group. They enjoy that. They enjoy the pressure, the grind, the tension, the anxiety that goes with leadership. They look forward to it. Not everybody does. And there have been great, historical lessons of people who reached a certain position in corporations, in the military, and had great charisma. People liked them. But somehow, when the big issues came, when the big problems came, the will wasn't there. So that's the first thing. And you've got to, not everyone wants to be a leader. But when you sign up, you have to know what you're signing up for. And it is, think of yourself as having that will, the same will that got you here, putting that in place as you manage people. The second thing that great leaders have, and they don't say this, they don't have to communicate it every day, they convey this through their actions, through their behavior, through their body language, through who they are, is this idea that they believe in a mission that's bigger than their career. And I'll tell you, in the business world, where I spent 30 years, you meet a lot of people who are worried about one thing, their career. And people can spot that in a second. And once people spot that, they'll follow you, because if you're the boss, they have no choice. But they're not going to follow you very far. And people just have, you've seen it, people they have a nose for that. They can sense it, they can see it when someone is out looking for themselves, as opposed to the team, the mission, the goal, the institution, whatever it is you represent, has to be bigger than you. And you have to show that. I spent 2 years on the board of Colgate Palmolive. And they had the most incredible CEO. His name was Reuben Mark. He had been CEO for 20 years. And he hated publicity. He just a very low-key guy. His numbers were a lot better than other companies that you hear a lot from. And he used to say, look, when I'm in a meeting with my people, if I'm in a meeting with 20 people, I am the least important person in that meeting. Because sure, I'm the boss and I'm the big guy and I'm the chairman, but they're the ones who are getting the work done. So if somebody wants to talk, I let them talk. If somebody wants to ask a question, I let them ask the question. Because I'm there to listen and to learn from them, because I'm trying to lead them and trying to lead the people and not manage their work. So I behave and I let them know that I'm the least important person in the room. And I'll tell you, I have been in rooms with him, and it's amazing that he does that. His presence is felt, but he doesn't give the impression that he's the guy with all the answers. He's the guy who knows it all. The institution is bigger than he is. And that, I'll tell you, is every single leader is able to do that. And sometimes they make decisions that go against their own self-interest, but it's good for the institution. It's good for the mission. It's good for the team. And that's why you were put as leader, because you're able to think that way. There are some other traits that are less obvious. And one of my favorites, as I think back at great leaders, starting with my career in Mexico. And as Dario mentioned, I started in Mexico City. And I spent the first 5 years in Mexico City. And I met some great leaders in Mexico, tremendous leaders. One of the traits that they have is that you always can understand what they want. There is a clarity and a simplicity to their vision that is undisputable, unquestionable. I can't tell you how often in the corporate world I would be in a meeting and some hotshot vice president would come in with a 1-hour PowerPoint. And the charts were mind-numbing. Circles and arrows and PERT charts and complicated models. And, some people say, gosh, no wonder this guy's a vice president. He understands all that stuff. I don't know what he's talking about. And some people say, I'm not going to ask the question because, They're going to realize that I'm just not up to this level because, this stuff is so sophisticated. So these people confuse complexity with sophistication. And whenever you have that in a leader, what you have is a very confused organization because nobody understands what the mission is. Nobody really gets it. And a lot of the times the ambiguity is maybe a reflection of the fact that the leader is not really sure what he or she wants. So I had the opportunity when I was at the Commerce Department to go to Baghdad and spend some time with General Petraeus. And this is not a comment on the war or how you may feel about the war. It's a comment about leadership. So we were sitting down one-on-one, great experience, and he knew I had come from business. So he said, Secretary, as you know, all good strategy starts with simple ideas. So it's the simplicity of the ideas that eventually turn into a huge strategy. And then the challenge becomes execution. So he said, let me give you an example. And he started to explain the simple ideas that led to the surge, what people call the surge. I don't know if you all remember, I think it was 2006 or 2007. He said one simple idea was that we realized that we had to live where we fought. We had to sleep where we fought. Sleep and live where we fought. Why? Because we would go into a town, clear the town of the bad guys, go back to our base. The next day they'd come back in. So the strategic insight was we have to stay there. We have to set up shop, set up camp, wherever we go and clear out these towns. Second idea was, we spend so much time knocking down doors and looking for people that the people who live here are afraid of us. They're not really sure who is their friend and who is their enemy. What we need to do is let's spend our time protecting them. And if we protect them, they will know that we're here for them, and they will take care of us. And they'll give us information, and they'll be on our side. And then finally, the third insight is, there's so many bad guys, we can't eliminate them all. So maybe once in a while, if we can get in a negotiation and get 10 of them out of the country, if we can convince people to get out of this insurgency, if we need to give some people some money to put down their arms and go home, we need to be able to do that once in a while because it's just going to be tough to eliminate everyone. Those were the three ideas. That led to something called the surge. Now, here in the newspaper and in the media, the surge was something that was billed as more troops, a surge. Nobody really understood what it meant. But boy, I can tell you, every time General Petraeus talked to his people, his troops, he just pounded away on those simple ideas, knowing that the complexity would be in the execution. So strategy always starts with simplicity, with simple insights. When the automobile hearings were going on, and I don't know if you recall, but they brought in the Congress brought in the three executives from the big three automakers, and at one time, one member of Congress asked the question, and he said, "Mr. CEO, are all of your cars profitable?" Pretty simple question. And the answer was, "At what level, Congressman?" And Congressman probably said, "Oh, I really got myself in a jam. I asked the question, he asked the question, I don't know what he's talking about." But I thought it was a very telling answer because in a company where the leader's insights and vision is simple and clear and known by all, he would have had a very easy answer to that. But what he was really saying was, well, at what level? We can look at contribution margin, and sometimes we do pretty well there. But if not, we can look at EBITDA. These are all financial terms. Don't worry about the terms. But the point is, we can always find a number that can make us look good. We can always find a number that can make us feel a little bit more comfortable. But you get a leader who understands exactly what they want, and they would have said, yes, Congressman, 80% of our cars are profitable, 20% are not, because we measure it by cash flow per car. No ambiguity. But when you have a company where you can use whatever measure you want to convince yourself or your board or your people that you're not as bad as others think, forget it. And that was a big part of, the big three's sense that they were okay. They had convinced themselves that they were okay, and they'd always find a number that would show that they were okay. So simplicity. Don't get blown away by complexity. If a leader gets up and tells you what he wants you to do or she wants you to do and you don't understand, it's not your fault. They've got to get their message aligned. They've got to get their message clear. They have to understand what it is they want. And until they do that, it'll be very, very tough to get hundreds, thousands, or even 10 people to go in the same direction and to execute a strategy. Because I tell you, the complexity, the real complexity comes down in making it happen. The last point I want to talk about in terms of leadership is also one that I wish I would have known 25 years ago. My father used to say that when someone is 10, they look up to their parents and say, hey, boy, my parents are the greatest thing in the world. When they're 17, 18, they say, I don't know. I don't know if they're that cool anymore. But when they're 30, they say, gosh, I wish I would have listened to them. So I wish somebody would have told me this 25 years ago. But great leaders are self-aware. They know themselves, and they feel comfortable with themselves. So they know what they are good at, and they know what they're not good at. 25 years ago, I thought if I wanted to be the leader, I had to be good at everything, because that's why I was leader. So I had to be better than everyone. So I was actually competing with my people to show them that, darn it, the reason I'm the leader is because I'm good at everything. And as you move through and get a little bit of experience, what you realize is you're not good at everything. You can't be. So a leader's job is to surround himself or herself with people who can do things that they can't. And then you get a real powerful team. Not the model where the team looks like the leader. People talk about diversity. Diversity is real. If you have a team of, let's just say, personality types, you have a team of introverts, it's going to be a pretty quiet meeting. So my favorite example, and one that for me was inspiring, was motivating. My favorite example of self-awareness in a leader and surrounding yourself with people who are better than you are at certain things and then letting them do those things was the example of Roberto Goizueta. Roberto Goizueta was also a Cuban-American, Latino, and he became the CEO of the Coca-Cola company I think it was 1982 or 83. I was working in Mexico at the time, and for me it was just amazing to be able to see that a Latino can become the CEO of a major, major Fortune 500 company. Now, Roberto was a shy man, extremely shy. He didn't like public speaking, and he had a very strong Cuban accent. So he was a little bit, self-conscious about his very strong Cuban accent. But he had an amazing mind for finance, for financial strategy, for asset allocation, for allocation of capital, just an unbelievable strategist in that regard. So he picked as his number 2 executive, as his president and chief operating officer, a man by the name of Don Kehoe, a back-slapping Irishman who loved public speaking, who loved to go out and motivate the troops, who loved to go out and talk to the sales force, who loved to go out and talk to customers. The amazing thing is that Don Kehoe was also Roberto Goizueta's rival for the top job. But that didn't matter to him, because what mattered was the Coca-Cola company. And what mattered was to build a good team. And in order to build a good team, he had to surround himself with people who could do things that he couldn't do, because he couldn't do it all. And if he had to be the one to go out and motivate the troops, it just wasn't going to work. So picking your rival. And he knew that there were people in the company who actually wanted Don Kehoe to be the CEO. But he picked them anyway. And they lasted together from 1982 to 1996. If you ever have a chance, go back and look at Coca-Cola's performance during that time. Unbelievable. Unbelievable what they did together. But it all started out with this notion of knowing who you are, being self-aware, and look, making yourself vulnerable. It's incredible how inspiring to your people it can be when they realize that their leader can be vulnerable. So I'm sure that once in a while he said with his big Cuban accent, look, I can't go out there and speak, I'm too shy, let Don do it. And people would laugh, and people would... So humanity, vulnerability, self-awareness, that will make you a great leader. I'm just going to close out with a story. We're all Latinos here, most of us, so you may be able to relate to this. But this was 25 years ago. So the world has changed. I started out in Mexico City, and it's a true story, by the way. I did start out selling cereal out of a Volkswagen van in Mexico City. And then I rose through the ranks, and I went to the head office, and I went back, and eventually I was named general manager of Kellogg Mexico. And I did that job for 5 years. And one day I was talking to my boss, who was he was the president of Kellogg International. And I said, look, I would like to try a new challenge. I'd like to be challenged in something new. I've been doing this job for 5 years. I think I've done it well. Give me an opportunity. Give me another challenge. And he kept asking, well, do you want to be like the head of Latin America, or do you want to have a few Latin American countries reporting to you? And I wasn't getting the message across that I wanted to go to one of the big markets. And in the world of cereal, one of the big markets happens to be an Anglo market, because it's either Canada, US, Australia, or the UK. But what he was asking me, without being blunt, was, can a Latino really lead in an Anglo market? Because it had never been done before in the company. It was this notion that, hey, if you're a Latino, you need Latinos. So you go from Mexico to Latin America. If you're African American, you're probably right to lead African Americans, but not Anglos. I mean, that's just not the way it works. And I finally realized what he was asking me. Eventually, he gave me a shot. And I think there have been other Latinos in the company who have gone on to manage Anglo markets and have done it very well. But the message for you is don't let anyone talk you into a box. Don't let anyone talk you into a niche. Think mainstream. Think big. Think leadership, but not leadership for fellow Latinos. Of course you can do that. Leadership for whoever needs to be led. Don't let anyone even think about that, because you are as good as it takes. And if you're here, it's for a reason. And you've got it. There's no question in my mind that you can find the will and the passion and the conviction, the self-awareness, the willingness to be bigger than just your own self-interest. So think big, shoot for the top. This is your time. This is a good time to be a Latino in this country. And I'm very proud of all of you. And I thank you in advance for the leadership and what you're going to do for this great country. Gracias. Buenas tardes. I do. Thank you. We have a little time for questions. Yeah.
I'd like to thank you for your speech, first of all.
Thank you.
But what I'd like to know is there are many Latino leaders out there that are very successful, such as yourself, in the business sector, the political sector, the educational sector. And us as newly certified young Latino leaders, we all have endeavors that we want to pursue within our communities once we return. And what I'd like to know is how might we be able to mobilize those successful Latino leaders such as yourself to assist us, to guide us, or to mentor us within, so we can be successful and within our endeavors?
It's a great question, and I like the idea that you're thinking about how to mobilize others to help you, because ultimately that's what you need to do. You need to have people, again, who may be at a higher level, at a lower level, or who may be your peers, but you need people. I would say reach out. Reach out, and you will know in your gut why you want them. And you will know in your gut that your mission is noble. And you will have a simple and clear message for them that will be convincing. But reach out to them. Reach out to them, and don't be shy about that. The other thing I would say is, whatever it is you're going to do, and this is just a personal experience, what I have found is that the best way to get ahead is to do what you're doing really well. And I say that as opposed to, having a job, but always be thinking about what's my next step, and when am I going to get promoted, and when am I going to have that job, and why did he get promoted and I didn't? If you do your job well and focus on your job, the future will come. Things happen. So I congratulate you for what you want to do. And I thank you. Thank you. Yes, sir. Okay, I'm going to just give you three thoughts, okay? One is we need to reform immigration because we're being very inefficient right now. And one of the reasons that I was asked the other day by someone, how do you feel about the Arizona law? One of the reasons I think it's a bad idea from a management standpoint is that it's highly inefficient because we're sending our finest law enforcement officers of the state of Arizona to look for parking lot attendants, gardeners, people who work in hotels, people who are making a living, and not looking for people who are doing us harm or dealing drugs. Or so I think resource management, but we need to reform immigration because there is just too much anxiety and focus and tension around the issue of who's coming to work. The reality is we need the workforce, okay? From an economic standpoint, we cannot grow without immigration. So we need a functional immigration system. And until we do that, we're going to be confused as to what it is we're trying to do in the border. A system that works, a system that there is an outline of a system that works. The problem is the will for somebody to take it on. I think, personally, I think President Calderon is showing a tremendous amount of leadership. This reminds me a little bit of Colombia 10 years ago. And, you know, a great leader by the name of Álvaro Uribe decided to take on the people who controlled his country. And 10 years later, you look back, you say, my God, he's done it. I mean, they're well on their way to breaking through. I was in Medellin not long ago, and you can walk down the streets and see families playing. 10 years ago, you'd be crazy to walk in Medellin. So I would support President Calderon, and I think we need to support him more than what we're supporting him now. President Clinton put $5 billion into Plan Colombia. You know, we talk about Plan Mérida, and I don't know how much it is, but it's not an effort with conviction where we can help our partners in Mexico. The third thing I'd say is recognize that it's both of our problems. That it's not Mexico's problem, and Mexico should not see it as our problem. The drugs are consumed here, but they're sold over there. The weapons come from here, and they're sent down there. We're in this together. And every time we start, you know, the finger pointing is when we get ourselves in trouble, and we get all confused, and nobody knows if we're fighting each other, or if we're out trying to get some poor guy who's working in a construction site trying to send money back home, or if we're out trying to find drug dealers. So to the extent that you can help people know that, if you are part of a group, you can instill those values. It's not Mexico's fault. It's not the U.S.'s fault. We need to work on the problem. But the single biggest thing I would do is be an advocate for immigration reform. And immigration reform, you'd be surprised how much of the border problem would be solved. It's a little bit counterintuitive, but how can you have national security if you don't know who is in the country? Immigration reform will allow you to make sure that people are legalized, and once they're legal, you know who they are. And the ones who aren't legalized, those are the ones you should go after. The ones who don't come forward and say, look, I'm here illegally, I'll pay a fine, I'll do whatever I have to do, but give me the ability to work and earn a living, those folks are fine. Background check, the whole deal. The ones who don't come forward, those are the ones we need to go after. But immigration reform, and if you're a leader in your community, and you can talk to your representatives, you can talk to your member of Congress, you can talk to your governor, whoever it is, be an advocate for immigration reform. It'll be a tremendous thing for our economy, and if we get it right, we're going to have an advantage for the next century. If we get it wrong, what a shame, because there's no other country in the world, with the exception of Canada and Australia, who have gotten this right. Thank you.
Any more questions?
Okay. Bueno. I'm sorry. Okay, yes. That's a great question. And this is going to be something that you all are going to have to deal with, because we have an economic problem, but I believe that that is a symptom of the fact that we have a political problem. And I'm not talking about the immediate term. I'm not talking about the president. I'm talking about the system. And it's interesting that, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, our competition economically was the Soviet Union. I mean, that was the big, there's no competition. There was no matchup. Today, we're up against countries that move very quickly, that have a different system, that run their countries like corporations. I mean, you saw when we put a stimulus package in place, compare the process we went through with the process China went through. They had a stimulus package out in 2 weeks. And you know what? It worked. Ours was, 8 months of negotiation, and in the end it was, done by committee, and did it work, did it not, who knows? So I wonder sometimes, is our democracy being challenged? What do we need to do to make our system work better? Do we need to think about term limits? Do we need to think about making people balance their budgets? I mean, I personally don't like the idea that every 2 years people go off and campaign. So what they're thinking about, think about believing in something bigger than yourself. There are a lot of people up in Congress who, what they believe in is getting elected in 2 years. And they'll do what they need to do to get elected in 2 years, as opposed to fix the problems of our time. So I really do believe that a leadership challenge will be to look at our system and to look at ways that we can make our system better, and our system more effective, and our system more competitive. And it'll be things like term limits. I don't know if you noticed just recently, but when the European crisis came up, Chancellor Merkel announced the day after that she was cutting her budget by $80 billion in 4 years. The new government in the UK announced the next day that they had cut $6 billion, because they have a little bit more power. Their government has a little bit more power over how to deal with the budget. We can't do that. And just to give you a factual statement, if you go back to World War II, there's never been 1 year where expenditures of the government have been below the previous year. We've never cut expenses. We've never done it. So when you hear someone say, well, efficient government, and we're going to cut expenses, and if you're a little bit suspicious, you have the right to be, because we've never done it. Why haven't we done it? What is it about our system that doesn't allow it? So for me, that's a challenge for you, because you're going to be running the system, not me. But I tell you, we have to look at our democracy and think about, how do we make it better? How do we make it more effective? How do we make it more functional? Because what we're seeing today, and what we've been seeing for a while, is a lot of dysfunction. Great question. Thank you. You know, I don't know if I can give you advice in an area where you are going to be an expert or you are an expert. But I'll tell you what one observation is. There's been a lot of talk recently about science, technology, engineering, and math, something people call STEM. You've probably heard about that. Math and science, math and science, math and science. That's all, you know, you get that right, we've got to get that right, math and science. The reality is that not everyone likes math and science, and not everyone is good at math and science. What makes our economy so great is that we have great innovations, so we have great engineers and mathematicians and scientists, but we are the #1 country in the world for book publishing. We are the #1 country in the world in cinema. We're the #1 country in the world in music. So what I would try to do is, as early as possible, help students understand what they love and what they're good at. Because it's a real shame when somebody goes into engineering school and they realize they don't like math. Boy, they wasted a lot of time. And as early as possible, primary school, secondary school, try to figure out where their magic is, because everyone is good at something. It's a matter of spotting it, figuring out. Everyone has a passion. And just because someone doesn't like math and science doesn't mean they're a failure. There is something that they like to do that they can contribute to society. And I think our teachers can help us identify that. That'll be my... Bueno, muchas gracias.